Hello, everyone. Welcome back into the echo chamber. You're locked in here with us. It's Gooey, Corey, and McKenna, and we're wrapping up our overall discussion on Echoes of Wisdom today. But like I said, leave a comment of other topics you'd like us to hit on more in depth, and we'll do more topic specific episodes. We're gonna kind of keep walking through the rest of the story and dungeons and whatnot. So here we go. There's one final region we haven't talked about. One we all explored at completely different times, which is the Hebra mountain region. Corey, I think you said like you explored this like super early on or something like that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. We talked last episode about how after I left the southern region, I immediately went east, explored all the Pharaon region. From there, I went north into Jabul Waters and went around the top of Jabul Waters, and I found my way into the Lanayru region. And before I did that, I knew that there was like that spider or whatever, the not the Strantula, the Crawltula. I knew it was around somewhere, so I went and found it, and I was able to use that to basically get up into the Hebra region, like way before I did anything. And I explored the whole thing when it was the entire area was all like stormy and snowstormy. So I made myself a bunch of like those smoothies that like heat yourself up. And when I didn't have those, I already got like the sconce, the torch echo. And you can literally just like
drag
put
it with
one of those out and bond it. Yeah, literally drag it with you. So I did
a bit of that.
I explored all of that region that I could. The area next... Conde is not in his house. The area next to Conde's house, you're not able to get through that little... You're not able to get through a lot of like the finding your way up, side-scrolling in the mountain sections, but like the overworld stuff, for the most part, you can get through pretty much all of it. So I had all of the warp points already, well before I ever came to this area for the actual story part of it.
You're a madman.
Which was nice, because I didn't have to do any exploring, because like once you get to that point, it's kind of like, oh, meet me up at the next part, and I would be like, all right, and I just warped there.
I did all that.
So
okay.
that was cool.
Like I've mentioned, I was kind of like, with this game, I was sort of like, I did explore the regions fully, like, usually before I'd enter the dungeon and stuff, but I did take a tact of when I got there, I kind of like followed their little story they laid out, you know?
I think, for reference, I think two or three recording sessions ago, not episodes, 2 or 3 recording sessions ago, which is one of our first recording sessions, I was talking about how I was in an area that I didn't think we were supposed to be in yet, and I found an enemy that was a repeat from an older Zelda game that we hadn't seen in a long time. I was referencing the Moas from this area. Because I had already at that point found the Moa Echo, and I was like, is that a Moa? There's absolutely no way. And it was. And I was like, this is so cool.
That was sick.
I love those guys.
Yeah, they were actually like, I kind of liked using them just because they would, you know, they like their little attack. It wasn't that powerful, but it was very precise, you know, and quick.
Yeah.
McKenna, how was the region for you?
I liked it a lot. I like a good snow area. I liked the music a lot. It was very atmospheric music. Very, you know, chilling, you know, got that cold vibe. There's some hot springs around, a few hot springs scattered around in the snow area. I guess this is the first part where I was like, oh, this is a smoothie, like temperature thing. Need to drink a smoothie. Need to drink an ice cold smoothie to stay warm. And there's a guy. There's a smoothie guy up there, and he's right by a hot spring.
That's how he can exist.
I was in this area before I ever went into the desert, so I actually thought that it was going to work like in Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom, where the desert was going to be like really hot or something, and the Elden area was going to be like fire or something. So I thought we were going to have.
There was some of that.
Was there?
Well, so
in those areas.
Yeah, there was in you could get like burnt or whatever in Elden, and there was a smoothie.
Oh yeah, there's like a fireproof one.
Yeah, I was actually kind of disappointed almost. I felt like they could have pushed for that a little bit more, you know.
Yeah, I could. I kind of was expecting it to be more like Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom, where it's just like an area effect, where like you either need specific gear or a specific smoothie or something to make your way. And this was really the only area where you need that, which I mean, I guess it's fine.
Even then, you didn't. You mentioned you didn't really. Which,
well,
you could do a similar thing, I guess, in Breath of the Wild too.
Yeah, you can do that in those.
I ran around holding an Ignazol a few times.
Yeah. Stuff like that.
I really wanted there to be like just some cozy, the parka outfit in Triforce Heroes. I was like, I want Zelda to have an outfit like this.
That would have been so good.
Yeah,
they could have. They totally could have. Maybe that's a missed opportunity.
I actually think so. Yeah, I think the game could have leaned more into needing to make smoothies. Like, obviously, like it wouldn't. That's even never that like tough of an obstacle in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, but it was a cool element of it that you kind of did have to prepare to go to places. And this was really the only one that felt like that. But yeah.
Maybe they could have done something for like the Faron region where it's like the rain it's so rainy that it like slows you down or something, and to prevent that you have to wear like a cute little rain jacket that makes you not like waterlogged.
Yeah. Well, look, I think there will be more games like this in the future, and you know what, that's something I'll say in Tears of the Kingdom. I felt like they added more stuff like that, and I did find myself more willing to like engage with those systems a little bit more. Like I would often like try to role play more and be like, oh, I want to wear this outfit for this task I'm doing.
Yeah.
Whereas like in Breath of the Wild, I kind of would just more brute force it, you know? So I think they could lean into that more in future games for sure. I think a fan favorite character, it seems to be from this region, is Conde or Condi or however you'd like to say it. McKenna, what'd you think of this character?
He was great. I don't know if there's been much discussion over, he's like a Yeti guy, and I kind of think he's like a combination of like the Twilight Princess and then the Phantom Hourglass Spirit Tracks Anuki.
Yeah.
He kind of looks more like the Anuki, but his behavior reminds me more of the Twilight Princess Yeti. I'm not totally sure on this, but I think maybe the Yeti Yeto refers to himself in the third person.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that he rescues you from the snowstorm, and you kind of have to shelter in there for a little bit. I love that stuff. You just get to hang out, get to explore his house. Very cute.
And he's kind of a sad story, sort of.
Yeah.
He's such a sweetheart.
So he's like
the best.
He's like lonely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's his big brother. Well, there's stuff about the dad too. The dad's like dead and buried in the backyard.
Yeah.
It's like dark, or at least the memorial's there, and it's like, dang. And the brother, apparently big brother, left on an adventure, and he's like, I'll be back someday, don't worry. And Conde's just been waiting for his big brother to come back, and it's so sad. So very sad.
Right, because at first you're like, oh, is his brother do you really leave on an adventure? You know, there is sort of that thing, you know. But then you do part of his story is like helping him understand that his brother did leave on the adventure and is coming back. Hopefully, well, yeah, yes.
Yeah, you find out that, like, no, he left on an adventure. There's, like, hieroglyphs. Not hieroglyphs, but there's, like, cave paintings
Cave
about
painting,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very sweet character.
We got this area was one of the only ones that wasn't marketed before the release in the game, and I thought that there was a possibility that was because there was going to be like some sort of civilization up there, whether it was a Nuki or something completely new, and that wasn't really the case. Like, even comparatively, this is one of the, like, there's the least going on compared to the other regions of this overworld. But man, Konde has the biggest heart out of any character in this game.
Yeah,
he makes up for it. He's great.
He does make up for it, and then I thought it's actually not even that big of a region necessarily, but it did feel like there's like multiple levels to it, and it did feel like you were scaling this mountain. Like they really did sell, like, in this map that feels expansive for like a 2D Zelda game, but relatively is not that big of a map. Like, but it still has like two different Zora areas. It has two different mountains, and they feel distinct from each other. You know what I mean? Like, the map itself, the overworld, I feel like has a lot of like unique character and like texture to it. So like the actual process of like scaling up this mountain felt like you were really like climbing a mountain, whereas like Elden, it had that, but it was more akin to it was like a couple layers up, and it wasn't that big of a deal. Or this felt more of a challenge, for like the later portion of this game. And so I don't know, it sold me on that. Especially call it Holy Mount Lanayru. You're like, just gave it this gravitas or something,
That's really cool. Oh, that's actually, but like before we get into the dungeon and that stuff, like that's something that we haven't really talked that much about, like what the story's asking you to do at this point, and it's basically like you're exploring the lands of the goddesses, right? And you get a bunch of stuff about the goddesses. The goddesses are back, and that's really
sorry.
Saved it.
No cat to blame it on here.
No, the goddesses are back, and it's like you basically need to get their not their blessing, but it's their sanction. You need to get the goddesses' sanctions from each of these areas, right? And in the midst of this, you get the lore drop of Null, and which is like, I think that's really cool. Maybe we can talk about that sometime later. But that's like pretty big like lore implications for the series. That like there's this thing that has been around as long, if not longer, than the goddesses, like before the world. That's pretty cool. But I think that's after you beat the second dungeon of these three, you get that lore drop of like, oh, there's this thing Null, which is basically just the void before the earth. Which is why the rifts are popping up.
We can talk about that now if you want, because that is around when it comes in. So I know we're taking some tangents and twists and turns, but that was very cool to me. There was something like I don't know if like cosmic horror is not the right term for it, but there's something kind of creepy about that, or just thinking about like that the nothingness was something, you know what I mean? And,
like a sentient void. Well, that's what I love about it, is that, for so long they've focused on Hylia. Especially like in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. They were very big on Hylia. And I've always been more into the creation mythos of Hyrule, of like the three golden goddesses descend from the heavens, create the earth, create the Triforce. And then a lot of the bad stuff stems off of that, right? And stuff like Skyward Sword, which is also when we get Hylia, you get like, oh, but also there are like ancient demon bad guy stuff, and like that's responsible for all the, all the like, oh, that's where Ganondorf comes from, I guess, But to hear that, like, before the goddesses technically created the world, there was this like force, this bad guy called Null, that was just like the void. Like, this thing is, we're getting so far back where it's like this spans the same, this now permeates through everything, which this game doesn't have. This game, I wouldn't say, is super story heavy or anything like that, and it's not trying to make like a huge impact on the lore of the series or something like that. But just to casually drop something like that, where it's like, no, this has been around like for all time forever, it's like, oh geez.
Yeah. Well, just,
No?
I would say too, not, you said bad guy, but I would say that's what's even creepier about it, is it was just a thing that existed. There wasn't
It's true.
even that concept, and it just had it like, I'm not even trying to like sympathize with it or anything. What makes it interesting is that it's almost this like non human like entity. I mean, it's just this sort of cosmic thing that had its like existence encroached upon, so it has this sort of
Noah was just minding its own business, and then the goddesses just like plastered a planet on top of it. And it was like, hey, I was here.
but that's like the cool. Oh, sorry, go ahead, McKenna.
Yeah, the during this like lore story thing, which had phenomenal artwork, I would just want to say.
Yeah,
I took some
Oh, yeah,
screenshots because I was just like, wow, this looks amazing. But the whole time I'm like, so this is like, what if before the Big Bang there was a thing that existed just on its own?
Well, I mean, that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's
I
literally.
was just like, oh, now there are things where there were not things, and there
And the absence of things is now mad that there are things.
Because it's
Yeah.
also a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just like gives it. That's what makes it a cool, like, what I love this game's like story, because I've mentioned this before, but it's much like Ocarina of Time or something, where you kind of go to these different areas and you just have these little vignettes with these different characters that move you through the game. You're going around helping people solve their problems, and there's like a greater thing going on, but you kind of they have all their own little self-contained, these sweet little stories, and they all they might have some like thematic thing that tie them together or something, but then, so I like that. But then, just in terms of the quote-unquote lore, what I like about it is what you said, Corey, is that I don't think it's necessarily trying to open up this can of worm with the lore. It's just, I mean, it's I think it is like, let's explore some facet that we haven't before, but I don't think they're going in thinking like, and how does this connect to this game or this game?
They're not trying to like explain anything or
Yeah,
nothing like that.
Yeah, because they do like to connect things, like we've mentioned that, with like, or like recontextualizing old things, but I think they mainly just do it for like the story of this game or whatever. And then what's fun about it is then that creates a bunch of like things for you to think about when playing the rest of the games. That's fun, like now when people watch the cutscene in Ocarina of Time, when the world is created or whatever, like you're gonna be thinking about Null, and I don't know, I just, that's fun to me. That's what I like about it, that is
fun.
It's not seeking to like fit a puzzle piece somewhere, it's just sprinkling in something new to the lore.
You know what? One of my favorite parts of the whole Null edition thing is to the lore and like any potential consequence, I guess, is that for the longest time, the fans had this theory, this crazy crackpot theory about the Tetraforce, about the absence in between
Oh my
the
god.
Triforce, the empty triangle.
Wow.
And I'm not saying like you can anyone can reach as much as they want about that, but I've already seen things about being like, does this confirm the absence is null? And it's like
Whoa.
I would love to see Tetraforce theories popping back up.
Null,
That's so
null is
cool.
real, yeah. That's okay. So the Tetraforce confirmed, yeah.
Tetraforce confirmed. It's null.
Okay, well, we'll talk more about Null in the end here, but
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure we did touch on that because I wanted to say that about the lore there. But let's talk. Well, we can talk about the Lanayru Temple, but again, you get a lot of some of the echoes and type of puzzles you're going to be dealing with in the overworld, and I think what the big ones here were like you had the ice blocks. That was a big one. And then this was truly to me what said like this is late game because I got these and then was like I didn't need any other echo for the most part for traversal, which was the clouds.
Yeah.
The clouds were incredible. They were just they were beds that you could put anywhere and didn't have to be on anything.
Yep. Clouds, got the clouds, and immediately it was like, okay, this is my most used echo.
Yeah,
Just
that's
clouding everywhere. And and you said you did this. You did this dungeon last, right?
Yeah.
McKenna and I did this one second to last. So like, I had clouds for a pretty good chunk of the late
gosh.
game, and I was just like,
seriously.
on over everything.
Yeah, I wonder what that would be like. See, I do want to replay this and like try to get some of the crazy stuff early, like clouds and I don't know. Anyway, we'll come back to that. But yeah. So okay, the temple itself. McKenna, what'd you think of the Lanayru Temple? Like clearly, like it did have a standout central mechanic. But yeah, what was your feeling?
Yeah, I really liked this mechanic of like the air conditioning and the heat, switching them back and forth. Yeah. It was fun to go into a room and look around and be like, okay, do I need ice or do I need water? Do I need to go swimming somewhere to reach something? And then, where do I have to go to switch the temperature, and how do I go about switching the temperature here? Do I need to return to the room multiple times at different temperatures? This is a really cool mechanic with some going back in between rooms, and maybe like mostly just individual room puzzles where it was back and forth between two rooms to switch the temperature. But I said that Lanu Temple was probably in my top two. This would be the other one.
Okay, yeah, probably same. Like, I liked that sort of, do this in one room, or like bring you had the thing similar to like Great Bay Temple where you could like kind of follow the path of the wiring, and this place is kind of inefficiently wired, their heating and cooling system. I think they could have probably the contractor could have done a better job, but I liked that sort of puzzle. Corey, what did you think?
So there are I thought this dungeon was great. Of course, honorable mention for the music, because as
Oh yeah.
always, theme is awesome. Theme is great. They killed it with the music in this game. Um, there are a lot of ice dungeons that I really like that are kind of just like they don't require you to do a ton of exploration. They kind of just take you for a ride almost, or they're focused more on like individual puzzles rather than like making you worry about you know, very much not like Pharaon Temple where it's like, well, all these crazy locked doors and entrances. You just got to find your way. But this is much more like there's a little bit of room for exploration, but it's for the most part it's like you have limited options. You got to go into this room and solve this puzzle before you can progress. There's tons of room for that in games like this and in all Zelda games, and I think this temple does it super well. Because I think out of all the dungeons in this game, the individual room to room puzzles are the strongest in this dungeon. Because of that the heating and cooling orb mechanic and how it affects other rooms that you've already been in or like are perpendicular rooms or whatever. And part of that is because there's a type of puzzle that I love in Zelda games where, like, I probably the first time we got it was in something like Eagle's Tower in Link's Awakening, where you get the semi-permanent object, the ball, and you got to take the ball from one spot to another spot, and wherever you take it actually matters. And you get stuff like that in the Oracle games too, like in Unicorn's Cave, where you got to, like, the magnetic ball, you got to take it from room to room, and you got to put it in a certain spot. And this is like, okay, do that, except you can't drop the ball at all. So you have to get to a spot in several rooms in this game, in this dungeon, where it's like, alright, there's a heating orb over here, and on the other side of this room there's a little area where you got to drop the heating orb, and you have to find a way to get it all the way over there without letting it go. Otherwise it'll like reset and go to the other thing. And that's just such a cool, like, that's such a clever way to recontextualize you going into a room, because it's like, go into a room, find your way to the orb, and make sure that you have a route to get all the way back with the orb. Otherwise, like, it's not doing the same thing. And then that usually isn't too complex in the beginning, because a lot of it's just like teaching you of, oh, you gotta, that's how you do it, and that's how you melt all this ice, or that's how you freeze all this water or something. And then later on in the dungeon, once you get towards the end where there's the big puzzle with, like, you have to find a way to drop the snowball to go and break the thing to get the big key, which is sick. That's such a cool thing. At that point you have to start being like, okay, the orb goes in here. The heater is like 2 or 3 rooms away. And it also affects this one. So you have to be like, okay, I have to melt this room. So let me follow the path to see where the source is, and then do it that way. And then you also get the really cool, the really clever puzzle of, like, when you pull the heating orb through the ice and it makes it like a freezing orb.
Yeah, that was
so
great.
You have to, like, melt the room and then refreeze it to solve a certain puzzle. That's like, I don't know, man. That's such a really cool use of game mechanics. That, like, I don't know.
There's times too where you have to, like, avoid
cool.
it getting hit so it doesn't change to cold or whatever. Yeah.
You have to, like, that room I think has like hot geyser, cold geyser, hot geyser, and to get it to be cold, you have to, like, bring it through the cold one and then jump it over the hot one so that it stays cold. Like, that's really cool. And actually, that I remember I was watching, shout out to Nico, because Nico did a let's play of this game on their YouTube. I was watching Nico go through this dungeon, and I think Nico did Pharaon before this one, and I did this one before Pharaon. And in both of these, there are puzzles where it's like you have to activate 2 floor switches at the same time. And this dungeon was my first exposure to that kind of puzzle. So what I ended up doing in one of those rooms is, like, I think the room had ice blocks or rocks or something that were part of the room. So what I would do is like I would make my own echoes of the ice blocks on top of the switches, and then put the actual room items on top of those ice blocks, and then instantly get rid of all of my echoes at the same time, so the actual items would drop onto the switches at the same time
okay.
when my echoes disappeared. Like that's how I ended up doing those puzzles.
That's pretty clever. I like that.
Yeah. But I couldn't figure out any other way to do it. So I was, and I remember this, I guess that's how I'll wrap up my spiel about this dungeon is this dungeon had the most puzzles where I did it and I was like, is that how you were supposed to do it?
Okay, yeah.
Like multiple times in this dungeon, I would solve a puzzle and be like, that was really cool. I don't know if I did that right.
I had one where I was like, this is absolutely not what you're supposed to do. I knew that for sure because I like I mentioned you could kind of follow the path and see what you need to do. It was pretty it was not too bad to figure out, but I feel like I just am looking for these things now. You know what I mean? Like maybe I might be bragging, but I think if you presented Great Bay Temple to me now and I didn't know about it, I would be able to figure it out in a way that I couldn't when I was a kid. So I feel like this again walks that line where it's got that sort of complicated puzzle feature, but it's not too tricky, but it also isn't insulting to your intelligence. You know what I mean? It really walks that fine line of kind of modernizing it / streamlining it without like robbing it of the actual puzzle. But anyway, there was one time where I cheesed it a bit and made the whole dungeon a slightly less complicated. There's a room where they want you to freeze the room so that you can do one of those, press both the switches at the same time, because one of the switches is surrounded by water, so you can't really put things on it, and like have something go from off of it to on it, unless you did what you did, then that would probably work. But so you're supposed to go to a different room and solve that, then come back to this room and continue on your journey. It's a bit of a kink in the route. But what I did was I put a bunch of ice blocks around the switch in the water, and they floated to the top, and then I just threw a what do you call them? The burger guys. Moldorm just on it. So it was kind of going on and off of it. And I went over to the other one and was like waiting, and I just tried to like step on it at the same time. And that worked. So I didn't have to do this whole other.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah, I didn't have to do this whole other thing when I froze it. But anyway, that was one where I was like, I definitely didn't have to do it. So all this to say, I think this was a very, I'm with you, McKenna. I think this is probably one of the best ones in the game. I think the trifecta is Pharaon, Hebra, and Gerudo. Those are the Triforce of great dungeons from this game.
Absolutely. We'll talk. I'm sure we'll have like a dungeon specific thing, but it's kind of weird how it is. It's literally like on off almost. Not that I don't think any of the dungeons in this game are bad, but there are 3 that are significantly less exciting than the other 3 that are wicked good.
Yeah, I think if we're doing the classic definitive ranking of Zelda, the pacing progression would be like a 3 out of 5 for me, where it's like I like all the things you do, but it's kind of wobbly, which you kind of expect a little bit with it being open-ended a little bit. Well, but even then, you know what I mean? It's like the ones that are here, like this, the tiers of the dungeons, I think, is a little off,
With the exception, I think you saying that the fire one, the Elden, probably would have fit pretty good in the first batch.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. But like that's why I think having the option to do these in different orders is really cool because like I feel like I did it. I feel like McKenna and I did it in the as good of an order as you can do it in terms of like rising complexity, in my opinion, at least. Because I like the puzzles in this dungeon were tough, but I've found myself racking my brain and like thinking a lot more, at least about the exploration in Pharaon in comparison to this one. Whereas this one had the tougher puzzles room to room, but like didn't take quite as long and was like less difficult to navigate.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
And that's
Yeah.
also why I like doing the Elden one first out of these three because it's definitely not on the same level as either of those in either of those categories.
What do we think about there's a mini boss. It's like what is this thing?
He's
He's a slime dude.
he's like the guy that
Oh
you
yeah,
split with the Pegasus boots.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But
Because
you got to heat him up, right, or freeze him.
Yeah.
You freeze him.
you
Yeah.
freeze him, yeah, because he comes out of
Yeah.
the hot spring.
Yeah.
So it's a hot springs boss, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
This is a good boss. I thought it was fun. It was much more. I feel like it was more involved. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot, you know, especially as it broke up. You know, it have like the little ones going across the screen. I had a fun time with this guy.
Yeah.
Okay, we're all in agreement. He was cool.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, the final boss of this dungeon, Scorchill. This was another one that I killed this thing like right away. Now it was that I was a bit
So
I was a
funny.
bit disappointed. Well, how did it go for you?
I like the boss, but like, I agree. I don't know. I agree. I don't get it. It's like it's literally like half the bosses took 20 seconds, and half the bosses took like 6 minutes, and I don't understand. And this was one where
Yeah.
it was so fast for me, because to be fair, I found it to be very easy because again, I think I just like immediately came up with a good solution that worked exactly how I wanted it to. When he was ice, I would throw a fire whiz robe out there and
Yeah,
it would literally
same.
just hit the helmet a few times and then once he's vulnerable, slash the booty out of him and then he does his crazy thing, which to be fair, I definitely took a good decent amount of damage because if he gets an attack off, he starts going all crazy. Right? But it's like a few phases, and each phase it's just like when he turns into the fire helmet, it's like, all right, throw an ice wizard
Yep,
out.
yeah.
Does the same thing, slash him up, and like,
And it's not
I
like
don't know,
those were like
I
hard to
agree.
come by whiz robes or anything. You know, like you're gonna see it. Yeah, I don't know. McKenna, what did you
Yeah.
think of it?
I didn't feel like it was fast. I don't know. I'm trying to remember if I used the Wizrobe or if I used Keys. But
Geese would be pretty effective too. I feel like, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I like the fire and ice thing.
Yeah,
That's a
always
thing we've
cool.
seen a couple times in the series, and I like when that comes back. Yeah, I think when he was like doing his like fast thing, I was like, what do I do?
Yeah. Well, that's why like I don't like even though this boss took me not long at all, I feel very similar to it as Goma, where it's like that's what's weird too is like both this fight and that fight. I can tell. I can look at it and be like, this is fun. This is a cool boss fight. In comparison to Volvagia, where I was like, the fight is pretty simple, but I had a way tougher time with Volvagia than the other two. You know? Like, the other
Okay,
two
yeah.
took me so super quick. I feel like I did them both super efficiently and got them out of the way really quick. But in my head, I was like, yeah, I could see what they were going for here. This is a fun fight. I liked that. And with Volvagia, it was more just like I was doing the same thing over and over, and it was more challenging, and it took way longer.
Yeah. For me, this one was just like the whiz robes. They killed them. I don't even know. It was like,
the Wizrobes. Well, I also think that's like, that's just kind of speaks to the nature of this game. Is like how you approach the fights. Sometimes it just works. Sometimes it just it takes a little longer. You know, it depends what echoes you're using. Depends on how you're attacking it, which I think is cool overall. You know.
Yeah, I can't quite explain it, but there's something that feels different to me than like when I solved that puzzle a minute ago. That felt like, ooh, I figured it out. Whereas like in this, I guess it was because I did like that what felt like the obvious thing, and it was like hella effective. You know, that was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't feel like, ooh, I outsmarted the game, you know.
I did feel a little bit like not outsmarted it, but I was like, oh, I have these powerful echoes that at my disposal. I felt like I felt like I picked the most. I felt like I maxed out the efficiency as much as possible.
Fair. Okay. You know? Okay. Well, overall though, the dungeon was great. So.
Oh yeah, it was Conde's brother, by the way.
Yes.
Missed that part.
Wait.
Sad, scary.
But it was fine. It was fine. We get in the credits at the end.
Yeah, it was an echo.
It's all good at the end. You know.
Yeah.
Spoilers.